Well, schools aren't just for teaching math, reading, or science, and to be honest, they haven't been for a long time. But now they're also teaching kids to feel ashamed of their families. 158th graders at Badger Middle School in West Bend, Wisconsin, were recently given a privilege test that identified them as being privileged for being white or rich or having an intact family. This is common, by the way, in schools across the country. School officials at Badger Middle School said that privilege education was important to enable the students to succeed in their careers somehow. Nell Daly is a psychotherapist, and she joins us tonight. Now, thanks for coming on. This strikes me, and I've seen this before, I've seen it with my own kids, it seems cruel. Children are, as you know, very sensitive about being called out as different, and that's exactly what this does. And it singles out some kids and basically suggests that they're bad for things they can't control. Why would they do this to children?
Well, I would have to respectfully disagree with you here. As a journalist, let's just put this into context. They gave this test in an English class after the students read To Kill a Mockingbird.
I'll have to read Marge's book, and I swore never to read again after To Kill a Mockingbird gave me no useful advice on killing mockingbirds. It did teach me not to judge a man based on the color of his skin, but what good does that do me?
And what they were doing was discussing Jim Crow laws. So it's very difficult for teachers to teach history, U.S. history and world history, without talking about privilege and how positions of privilege, when they're abused, can lead to really horrible crimes being committed to humanity.
I think one of the biggest problems with these whole privilege things is that they teach that all men are privileged or white people are privileged. That's not true. It's the rich that are privileged. If you think about lawyers, judges, politicians who make these laws, stuff like that, they have the power. And if you have a class of, let's say, 30 students, 15 girls, 15 boys, and out of those 30 students, maybe 1, 2, or 3 will become politicians, judges. So most people in their lifetime experience little to no privilege.
But I'm confused. So these are middle schoolers in Wisconsin in 2018. To Kill a Mockingbird is about Mississippi in the 1940s. What do their families have to do with that? Like, literally nothing.
It wasn't their families. What they were talking about is whether or not kids recognize what kind of privilege they have in the society by being who they are. For example, perhaps white, perhaps male. And
there it is, white and male. And sure, being a white person in those days compared to blacks was probably a privilege. But also women held that white privilege as well.
It's teaching children that they need to have compassion for people who are on the other side of whatever they are, and to also not abuse that position of privilege moving forward in their lives.
Oh, so they're scolding the kids for things they can't control, like their race or the condition of their family. I mean, by the way, isn't this...
I don't believe anybody was actually scolded, and in fact...
But the implication is, look, you have a special responsibility to be sensitive because of something you can't control. And by the way,
absolutely.
Really
and Tucker, if we didn't teach children this at this point, right, then we're going to raise little boys who end up becoming producers and executives at large movie studios who then end up committing crimes against women, like rape.
We end up raising little boys, not girls, of course not. Just come on, one time some feminists in these news or talk shows just say girls and women. And maybe in school we should talk to these girls that when they grow up and become teachers, that they shouldn't have sex with their underage students. But I doubt that we'll ever get lesson on that.
We need to teach children how to be really compassionate towards other people and to be much more sensitive to not abusing their positions of power.
How is this compassionate?
And when you are talking about children, do you mean actually children or just boys? I bet you just mean boys.
To single out little kids...
They're not little kids. So
They're
in
middle
fairness, these
schoolers.
children, no, they're middle schoolers. So by the time the children are in the 8th
But
grade.
hold on, how is it compassionate to make them feel bad for their race or their family situation? This does make them feel bad. It's happened to my kids.
Tucker, this is talking about shame and vulnerability is a crucial part of the classroom, and it's interesting what the parents. Yes, because what the parents were saying was that
Are the teachers qualified to do this?
I mean, are they? You've sat through U.S. history classes. You've sat through world history classes.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's one thing. Hold on, I'm not sure that being a middle school history teacher gives you, first of all, the right to talk to my kids about their family and to make judgments about their family, A. B, are they really qualified to navigate something this delicate? With does a bachelor's degree in history give you the ability to do this, to tackle the nuances here effectively? I'm not sure. I'm not convinced.
As a psychotherapist, I read the actual survey, and some of the questions, I agree with you, were a bit bizarre, and I didn't understand them. But asking children to recognize where they hold positions of power because of their race or their gender is really important, and it's very difficult for teachers
No, I would
not
correct you by saying it's really stupid, actually, because the idea that all people of one race are empowered and people of another race are disempowered is, first of all, factually wrong.
You're making this binary. This is a very nuanced conversation.
I'm not making it binary. The people who administer this test are.
When you talk about the Civil War, when you talk about World War II, how do you talk about those kind of world history events where many, many people were killed, where blood was actually spilled because of race, because of politics?
And which was the race of people fighting in those wars, the most of the soldiers? Wouldn't it be great if there was a time machine and feminists of today who talk about male privilege could be sent to those World War I and II battlefields, and they would talk about male privilege? I doubt that men who were fighting in, Civil War or World Wars, I doubt that being privileged was in their mind.
You can't not bring this stuff up with kids in a classroom.
Right, and I'm not suggesting that you don't bring it up. That's not at all what I'm saying.
That's what the teachers are doing. The teachers were hoping...
Well, hold on, slow down. What I'm saying is that you shouldn't say to kids that somehow you're implicated in it. The Civil War took place 150 years ago. It has nothing to do with the kids at Badger Middle School in Wisconsin.
No, that's not what the survey was saying. The survey was saying, do you recognize where you hold a position of power?
Come on. What do 8th graders know about power? Unless their parents are in positions of power. But think about it. 8th grader can't drive, can't drink, can't vote, can't live alone, needs to be with a guardian or parents. So yeah, I doubt that they know too much about power.
The thing that's interesting is what gets triggered.
But this is, hold on, this is subjective. This is totally subjective. I mean, I could say let's be totally real here. It's not always true that the white guy is the most powerful person in every situation. That's a gross generalization, actually.
I agree with you, but let's just say, for example, that men still make more money than women across many, many industries in this country. That's a position of power because you're a male in this society.
Of course, the pay gap. You know what, feminists? I'm gonna help you. If you believe in patriarchy and the pay gap, I have not a solution, but a method you can use as women to help erase that pay gap and patriarchy. As you know, women want to have that successful Christian Grey millionaire or famous, usually they are rich, but anyway, leave those men alone. Athletes, movie stars, singers, politicians, all those people, businessmen, all those men, leave alone. Don't touch them. Instead, you should date and marry homeless men, jobless men, and men who work part-time or a low-paying job. Because a lot of men want to get married, to have a family, and if not that, they just want to have a female company, if you know what I mean. So of course there are gonna be those power-hungry men and workaholics, but I bet that quite a lot of men would be dropping out of workforce or taking lesser positions so they could attract a woman. And those jobs would be filled by some people. If there were qualified women, they would have a better chance of getting those jobs. So women, leave those men who make good money alone. Go for those who don't make a lot of money. You're welcome.
And it's true if we look at...
It's just not actually true, though. I mean, I don't know. I'm not faulting you. I know you're a shrink, not an economist, but you may not be keeping current with the actual numbers on this. That's not actually the whole story, but that's a whole another conversation. I'm saying, why is it not okay just to have teachers teach history and English and math? We're turning out generations of illiterates. Why wouldn't we stick to those things?
Well, you have to teach history. You also have to teach why these things occurred in U.S. history. And part of that is an emotional conversation. You cannot talk about the Civil War, Jim Crow laws, without it becoming emotional.
Yeah, apparently not. I can. Nell, thank you.
All right.
Great to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.